Hello, my name is Rex Haynes. I am a resident here of Summersville, West Virginia, and I am going to introduce to you today a phenomenon, actually a phenomenal lady who is in her tender 91st year, and the phenomenon is her memory. Now, all of us went to grade school and had to learn poems. We had to learn little poems and whatnot. How many of you remember those poems that you learned in the first and second grade? How many of you actually went to a one-room school and had to learn those poems? The lady that's here with us today has done all of that. As I said, she's a phenomenon in that she can remember those poems that we very fast forgot. And she is going to give you a demonstration of her memory and her ability to recite poetry from, well, shall we say 80 years ago. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Miss Mozelle Brown.
I'm Mozelle Brown, and this is some of the poems I've learned through life. And the first one I think we learned off of an old phonograph record where we'd keep playing it over and over until we children learned it. It's about me and Pap and Mother. When I was a little chap, I sat at the table between my mother and my Pap. I ate all I was able. Pap, he fed me on one side and Mother on the other. I tell you, we were chums them days, me and Pap and Mother. On Sundays, we'd take great long walks through the woods and pastures. Pap, he packed a cane along. Mother and I came after. Sometimes there was a sister along, and sometimes there was a brother. But there's always us three, me and Pap and Mother. Pap, he didn't gabble much. He held his head down thinking. Didn't seem to hear us talk or the cowbells clanking. Loving Streaks peered worried then about one thing or another. Didn't seem to understand Pap, that is me and Mother. I got big and went away and left the farm behind me. Thinking of that parting yet seems to choke and blind me. Of course, I'd be all well and safe with my married brother, but we had to part us three, me and Pap and Mother. Hurried home one day and found Pap pale, cold, and hollow. Seemed right off he'd have to go where we couldn't follow. Loving Streaks all turned out then. Oh, we loved each other. We talked fast to keep back the tears, me and Pap and Mother. Pap, he's dead, Mother ain't. Soon will be, I reckon. Claims already she can see Pap's forefinger beckon. Life ain't long. I'll go myself one of these days or other. Then we'll have good times again, me and Pap and Mother. Prettier hills we'll have to climb, sauntering along old-fashioned, hear the wild birds singing round and see the water splashing. If God will only let us three be together like we'd rather, heaven will be a greater place for me and Pap and Mother. And then another favorite is Jonah and the Whale. Years ago, there was a program from the Charleston radio station, Cap, Andy, and Flip, back in the 30s. And Andy Kaplinger would repeat this poem, and I ordered it from him so I could remember it. Come here, buddy. Come to your Pap. I'll tell you a story. Climb up on my lap. It's true as a story of Daniel and Ruth. Although it sounds fishy, it's every bit the truth. Now listen right good while I tell you this tale, how Jonah the prophet got caught by a whale. The whale caught poor Jonah, and bless your dear soul, it not only caught him, it swallowed him whole. Now part of this story is awfully sad, about a big city that went to the bad. When the Lord saw those people with such wicked ways, he said, I can't stand them but 40 more days. So he told Jonah to go and cry to that wicked city and tell them that I give them 40 days to get humbled down, and if they don't do it, I'll tear up their town. Jonah heard the Lord calling, and he said, no, I'm too awful busy, and so I won't go. Those Nineveh people are nothing to me, and I'm again foreign missions, you see. So he went down to Joppa, and there in great haste he boarded a vessel for a different place. The Lord looked down on that ship and said he, Jonah's trying to run away from me. So he set the wind blowing with squeaks and squeals. The sea, it got rowdy and kicked up its heels. Jonah confessed it was caused by his sin. So the crew threw him out and the whale took him in. The whale said to Jonah, old fellow, don't fret. I sent here to take you in out of the wet. So he opened his mouth and poor Jonah went in, there to be punished just right for his sin. 'Twas the funniest sight that ever was seen as Jonah rode off in his new submarine. But them sinners of Nineveh did not repent, for God's message of warning to them was missent. Down on a bed of green seaweed, the whale tried to rest. He said, "I'll sleep me a nap while my food I digest." But he got mighty restless and sorely afraid as he rumbled inside while the old prophet prayed. So you see how God's letter to Nineveh lay in a dead letter office for 3 nights and 3 days. Jonah was shut up tight as a lock, but all things will open as sure as you knock. On the 3rd day, the old feast arose from his bed with his stomach tore up and a pain in his head. He said, "I must get to the air mighty quick, 'cause this filthy old prophet's a-making me sick." He blinked his big eyes and he wiggled his tail and set out for shore to deliver his mail. When he got to the shore, he looked all around, and then he spewed Jonah out on dry ground. Jonah thanked God for his mercy and grace, and turned around at the whale, made a face, said, "After 3 days and nights, you've found one good man, old sucker, you can't keep down." The prophet stretched out with a yawn and a sigh and sat down in his sand for his clothing to dry. He thought how much better his preaching would be, since from Whale College he had his degree. After resting and drying a while in the sun, he started for Nineveh almost in a run, saying, "I must hurry and try not to sin, so I'm sure I don't want to be swallowed again." He reached Nineveh about a week late, and he preached from the time that he entered the gate till the whole population repented and prayed, and the great hand of vengeance and justice was stayed. When you run away from home, bud, remember this tale. When you disobey mama, remember the whale. There are varmints to get you on sea and on land, and a boy can be swallowed much easier than a man.
The next poem that she's going to present to you is basically came from the Brooklyn Eagle some many years ago under the title of 30 Years with a Shrew. This is a true story. It is based on the fact that a woman had drug her husband into court claiming cruelty and neglect of her. And she turned out to be such a nasty witness against her husband, and the judge became very weary of the woman's tongue, and he asked the husband, "How long have you been married?" 30 years, replied the defendant. "Well," said the judge, "a man who has lived with this woman for 30 years has had punishment enough. Defendant, the man, you are discharged." And that is the basis for St. Peter at the Gate.
St. Peter stood guard at the Golden Gate with a solemn mien and an air sedate. When up to the top of the golden stairs, a man and a woman ascended there. Applied for admission, they came and stood before St. Peter so great and good, in hopes the city of peace to win, and asked St. Peter to let them in. The woman was tall and lank and thin, with a scraggly beardlet upon her chin. The man was short and thick and stout, and his stomach was built till it rounded out. His face was pleasant, and all the while he wore a kindly and pleasant smile. The choirs in the distance the echoes awoke, and the man kept still while the woman spoke. "O thou who guards the gate," said she, "we too come hither beseeching thee, that we might enter the heavenly land and play our harps with the angel band. Of me, St. Peter, there is no doubt. There's nothing from heaven to bar me out. I've been to meeting 3 times a week, and almost always I'd rise and speak. I've told the sinners about the day they'll repent of their evil way. I've told my neighbors, I've told them all about Adam and Eve and the criminal fall. I've showed them just what they'd have to do if they went in with the chosen few. I've made their duty a pathway clear and laid out a plan for their whole career. I've talked and talked to them loud and long, 'cause my lungs are good and my voice is strong. So, good St. Peter, you'll clearly see the gates of heaven is open to me. But my old man, I regret to say, hasn't hardly walked in the narrow way. He smokes and he swears, and grave faults he's got. I don't know if he'll enter or not. He never would pray with an honest vim or go to revival or join in a hymn. So I had to leave him in sorrow there while I with the chosen united in prayer. He ate what the pantry chanced to afford while I in my purity sang to the Lord. And if cucumbers was all he got, it's a chance he merited them or not. But oh, St. Peter, I love him so. To the pleasures of heaven, please let him go. I've done enough. A saint I've been. Won't that atone? Can't you let him in? But it's gospel, I know 'tis so. The unrepentant must try below. But isn't there some way you can see that he can enter who's dear to me? It's a narrow gospel which I pray, but the chosen expect to find some way of coaxing or fooling or bribing you so that their relatives can amble through. And say, St. Peter, it seems to me the gate's not kept like it ought to be. You ought to stand in that opening there and never sit down in that easy chair. And say, St. Peter, my sight be dimmed, but I don't like the way your whiskers are trimmed. They're cut too wide and outward tossed. They'd look better than they're cut straight across. Well, we must be going our crowns to win, so open, St. Peter, and we'll pass in. St. Peter sat silent and stroked his staff, but in spite of his office he had to laugh. Then he said with a fiery gleam in his eye, "Who's minding this gateway, you or I?" And then he rose with his stature tall and pushed a button on the wall and said to the imp that appeared all aglow, "Escort this woman down below." The man stood still as a piece of stone, sadly, gloomily there alone. A settled lifelong idea he had that his wife was good and he was bad. He thought if she went down below that he would certainly have to go. If she went to the regions dim, there wasn't a ghost of a chance for him. Slowly he turned by habit bent to follow wherever the woman went. St. Peter, standing on duty there, observed that the top of his head was bare. He called the gentleman back and said, "Sir, how long have you been wed?" 30 years, he said with a sigh, and then he thoughtfully added, "Why?" St. Peter stood silent with head bent down. He raised his hand and scratched his crown. Then, seemingly a different thought to take, slowly half to himself he spake. 30 years with that woman there? No wonder the man hadn't any hair. Swearing is wicked. Smoking's not good. He smoked and he swore. I should think he would. 30 years with a tongue so sharp. Oh, Angel Gabriel, give him a harp. A jeweled harp with a golden string. Good sir, pass in where the angels sing. Gabriel, give him a seat alone, one with a cushion up close to the throne. Call up some angels to play their best and let him enjoy the music and rest. See that on the finest ambrosia he feeds, he's had about all the hell that he needs. It don't seem right the thing to do, to roast him on earth and in the future too. They gave him a harp with a golden string, a glittering robe, and a pair of wings. And he said as he entered the realms of day, "Well, this beats cucumbers anyway." And so the scripture had come to pass, "The last shall be first, and the first shall be last." These next poems are from the McGuffey's readers that Mother taught me years ago. One of them is Mary Dow. It's about a little match girl. "Come in, little stranger," I said as she tapped at my half-open door, with a blanket pinned over her head that reached to the basket she bore. A look full of innocence fell from her modest and prettiest blue eyes as she said, "I have matches to sell, and I hope you're willing to buy. A penny a bunch is the price. I hope you'll not find them too much. They're tied up so even and nice and ready to light at a touch. I ask what's your name, little girl?" "'Tis Mary," said she, "Mary Dow," and carelessly tossed off a curl that played on her delicate brow. "My father was lost in a deep, the ship never got to the shore, and mother is sad and will weep to hear the wind blow and sea roar. She sits there at home without food, beside her poor sick Willie's bed. She give all her money for wood, so I sell matches for bread. I'd go to the yard and get chips, but then it would make me so sad to see the men building the ships and think they had made one so bad. But God, I am sure, who can take such fatherly care of the birds, will never forget nor forsake the children that trust in His word. And now if I can only sell the matches I brought out today, I think I shall do very well and rejoice with the pay. Fly home, little bird," then I thought, "fly home full of joy to your nest. I took all the matches she brought, and Mary may tell you the rest." And I'd always say to Mother, "Mommy, what is the rest?" And another one from McGuffey's readers, "I love you, Mother," said little John. Forgetting work, his cap went on, and he went off to the garden swing, leaving his mother the wood to bring. "I love you, Mother," said little Nell. "I love you better than tongue can tell." She teased and pouted for half a day, till her mother rejoiced when she went to play. I love you, Mother, said little Fran. Today I'll help you all I can. How glad I am that school doesn't keep. So she rocked the baby till it fell asleep. And stepping softly, she took the broom and swept the floor and dusted the room. Busy and happy all day was she, helpful and cheerful as a child could be. I love you, Mother, again they said, 3 little children going to bed. How do you think that Mother guessed which one really loved her best? And another one, there's a wonderful weaver high up in the air that weaves a white mantle for cold earth to wear, with a wind for his shuttle and a cloud for his loom. How he weaves in the light and the gloom. With the finest of laces he decks bush and tree, on the cold frozen meadows a cover lays he. A quaint cap he places on pillar and post, and he changes the pump to a brim silent ghost. But that wonderful weaver grows weary at last. The shuttle lies idle that once flew so fast. Then the sun peeps abroad on the work that's been done, and he says, I'll unravel it all just for fun. And I always loved the Mother poems, and this is another one about Mother. Most of us can relate to. She never closed her eyes in sleep till we were all in bed. On party nights till we came home, she often sat and read. We little thought about it then when we were young and gay, just how much Mother worried when us children were away. We only knew she never slept till we came in at night, and that she waited just to know that we got home all right. Why, sometimes we'd stay out till 1 or 2 or 3. It seemed to me that Mother heard the turning of the key. For always when we step inside, she'd call and we'd reply. But we were all too young back then to understand just why. Until the last one had returned, she always kept a light. Mother couldn't sleep until she told us all good night. She had to know that we were safe before she went to rest. She seemed to fear the world might harm the ones she loved the best. And once she said, when you're growing to women and to men, perhaps I'll sleep the whole night through. I may be different then. And so it seemed each night and day we knew our Mother's care, and always when we came back home we found her waiting there. Then came the time when we were called together around her bed. The children all are with you now, the kindly doctor said, and in her eyes there gleamed again that old-time tender light that said she'd just been waiting just to know we were all right. She smiled that old familiar smile and prayed to God to keep us safe from harm throughout the years, and then she went to sleep. In grade school, we learned so many of our poems, and some have stayed with me, and I've forgotten a lot of them. But the village blacksmith. Under the spreading chestnut tree, the village smith he stands. The smith a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands. The muscles of his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. His hair is crisp and black and long. His face is like the tan. His brow is wet with honest sweat. He earns whatever he can. He looks the whole world in the face, for he owes not any man. Week in, week out, from morn to night, you can hear the bellows blow. You can hear him sling that mighty sledge with measures beat and slow, like a section ringing the village bell when the evening sun is low. The children coming home from school look in at the open door. They love to see the flaming forge and hear the bellows roar, and catch the burning sparks that fly like chaff from a thrashing floor. He goes on Sunday to the church and sits among his boys. He hears the parson pray and preach. He hears his daughter's voice singing in the village choir. It makes his heart rejoice. It sounds to him like her mother's voice singing in paradise. He hardly must think of her once more, how in the grave she lies. But with a hard, rough hand he wipes a tear out of his eyes. Toiling, rejoicing, sorrowing, onward through life he goes. Each morning sees some task begin, each evening sees it close. Something attempted, something done, has earned a night's repose. Thanks to thee, my worthy friend, for the lesson thou hast taught. Thus at the flaming forge of life, our lessons must be wrought. Thus on the sounding anvil, our lessons must be taught. And somebody's mother. The woman was old and ragged and gray, and bent with a chill on a wintry day. The streets were wet with a recent snow, and the woman's feet were aged and slow. She stood at the crossing and waited long, alone, uncared for, amid the throng of busy people that passed her by. None needed the glance of her anxious eye. Down the street with a laughter and shout, glad with freedom that school let out, came the boys like a flock of sheep, hailing the snow piles wide and deep. Past the woman so old and gray, hurried the children on their way, none offering a helping hand to her, so weak, so timid, afraid to stir, lest the carriage wheels and the horses' feet would crowd her down the slippery street. At last came one of the merry troop, the gayest laddie in all the group. He paused beside her and whispered low, "I'll help you across if you wish to go." Her aged hand on his strong young arm she pressed, and without hurt or harm he guided her trembling feet along, proud that his own was firm and strong. Then back again to his friends he went, his young heart happy and well content. She's somebody's mother, boys, you know, for old she's aged and poor and slow. I hope somebody will lend a hand to help my mother, you understand, if ever she's old and poor and gray and her own dear boy is far away. And somebody's mother bowed low her head in her home that night, and the prayer she said was, God be kind to the noble boy, who's somebody's son and pride and joy. And I have one that a friend wrote years ago, probably back in the 50s, that stayed with me through the years. It's the night after Christmas. It was the night after Christmas and Santa was gone. The old family doctor put his overcoat on. He cranked up his Lizzie and threw in his pills and came over to our house to cure all our ills. The children were moaning and groaning in bed while pains like a thunderstorm ran through their head. And Mama was running from one to the other with hanky for sis and water for brother and a wet cloth for me to put on my head and soda for Pa. He was dying, he said. And out on the lawn arose such a clatter, I grabbed my poor head and said, now what's the matter? Was the little old doctor in his old Model T, and he walked in the door just as calm as can be. He took off his gloves as he stomped off the snow, said howdy to Pa, but Pa just said, oh, I've been sick before, but never like this. It's a touch of the flu and my poor rheumatiz. He took off his coat and went straight to work. He took all our temperatures and turned with a jerk. He felt all our pulses, our tongues he looked o'er, and made us say, ah, till our throats were all sore. He pounded our chests, our tummies and such, till I thought that I'd die and I didn't care much. He said not a word, but went on with his toil and took out a quart bottle marked pure castor oil. He poured it all down us and said, for your ills, I'll leave you 2 pounds of these little red pills. Take 2 every hour, and to our surprise, said you've eat too much of nuts, fruits, cakes, and pies. He put on his coat as he went out the door, jumped in his Lizzie, and took off with a roar. But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, you'll be better tomorrow. Good night, folks. Good night. And these two, I don't know if you want to put them in or not. Who's that coming up the path? Run, Betsy Jane, and see. I bet that's hateful old Miss Jones a-coming here to tea. Miss Perkins, is it? Dearie me, I'd rather hear it thunder. She's allers out of tattling. What brings her here, I wonder? She's got that old silk bonnet on. It's older than the hills. It really looks ridiculous, those ruffles, tucks, and frills. Good gracious me, she's got her work. I'll have to get my knitting. Suppose you know Bill Smith has given her daughter Ann the mitten. I hope she's only come to call. Don't ask her, dear, to stay, 'cause if you urge her hard enough, she'll never go away. Of all the women that I know, Miss Perkins beats them holler. She's coming here to spy around, I bet a silver dollar. Come in, Miss Perkins, is that you? I'm dreadful glad you've come, 'cause as I said to Betsy Jane, this house seems awful glum. Miss Perkins, take the rocking chair, and Betsy, take her bonnet. Be sure you put it where the flies and dust won't get upon 'em. Says I, not half an hour ago, says I to Betsy Jane, I wonder where Miss Perkins is. Why don't she come again? Says I hope she'll come today if nothing's up to hinder. She's coming now, said Betsy Jane, looking out the window. Miss Perkins, take a pinch of snuff and tell me all the news. I haven't heard it for so long I've almost got the blues. Miss Johnson's got a new silk hat. Miss Perkins, well, I never. I wonder if she really thinks the money will last forever. The deacon's son's a-waiting on Miss Grimes' cousin Rose. What for do you suppose? I hardly think he'll marry her. Her father won't be willing, 'cause she's as poor can be. She isn't worth a shilling. I suppose you know Marie Smith named her baby Lily. I'd call it Cabbage Hollyhock. It ain't a bit more silly. I guess you heard the talk that's round about the widow Hatch. She's after Thomas Sweet. Now won't that be a match? Her husband ain't been dead 6 months, and now she wants another. I wouldn't have her for a daughter-in-law if I was Thomas's mother. Have I heard about the wedding? No, who underneath the sun? John Waite and Huldah Robinson, Miss Perkins, you're in fun. Why, he's as much as 52, and Huldah isn't 20. Suppose you know the reason why. The old fool's cash is plenty. Miss Perkins, now twixt you and I, my Betsy and your Ann are the smartest girls in town, deserving of a man. That spruce young clerk in Woodrum stores I was just remarking was here till 10 last Sunday night. I guess he thinks he's sparking. Miss Perkins, are you going now? And one thing I'd like to know. Go bring her bonnet, Betsy Jane. What makes you hurry so? Your bonnet's just so nice and new. Those ruffles and those gathers there are really very dashing. Oh, yes, Miss Perkins, I will come, and you must come again. You haven't been here for so long. It almost is a sin. Goodbye. Yes, Betsy Jane can come to see your daughter. There, she's going. I hope she got what she was after. Of all the folks, I never did see such a tattling critter. They ought to call her Scandal Bones. I'm sure the name would fit her. I suppose I must return the call, but I weren't sociable at all. And now another one, I don't know if you want in there or not. Melinda fell way deep in love with a mountain boy she knew. But that was quite the proper thing, 'cause he was mountain too. She hurried home to tell her pa that soonly she would wed one Rufus Brown, but Pappy shook his head. No, honey child, you can't do that. You'll have to find another. Don't tell your ma, but Rufus Brown am surely your half-brother. Melinda shed a few salt tears and slowly went her way. Soon she met another boy and hastened home to say, Pa, I is going to marry that Smith boy down the street. He don't have no bad habits, and he dresses up real neat. Again, Pappy shook his head and looked across at Mother. You can't do that, child. That Smith boy's your half-brother. Melinda forgot her oath and blurted out to Mother, Pa says I can't marry Rufus Brown because he's my half-brother. And when I turned to Samuel Smith, although it sounds like treason, again Pa says I can't marry him for that same old reason. Ma said, honey child, don't cry. Put on your wedding cap and marry either one you want. You ain't no kin to Pap. That was written by Mrs. Howard from Cowan and came out in the news leader. Jim Comstock had put it in the news leader back in the 50s. So Miss Howard gets the credit for that poem. That's it.